Welcome to Borderline Furniture RX. I'm Mara and this is project number 37. My neighbor had this out in their front yard with a free sign on it. So of course I had to take it in and it's been sitting a minute collecting dust waiting for me to get to it. The top doesn't look actually half as bad as it does with the dust on it, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the finish. I love this little shelf on the bottom. It's so unique. I'm always an advocate for thoroughly cleaning your surface prior to painting or doing anything, but in this case it was obvious that this needed cleaning. So I figured the best way to clean and paint the shelf was to just remove it. Since I'm going to be painting this a dark color, I'm just going to go ahead and scuff sand before painting. So let me show you my favorite eco stripper. It's called Strip It, and I'm going to use that to remove the finish on the top and also the sides. I just need to make sure that I evenly apply a coat across the top, and then I'll cover it and let it sit for several hours to allow the stripper to do its work. Ordinarily, I'd prefer to cover this with a clear plastic paint tarp, but I didn't have that on hand, and this plastic came free with a purchase or a find of a free dresser, and it was in one of the drawers, so I just decided to put it to good use. The sides stripped much easier than the top, but then again, that makes sense because you would put a heavier layer of varnish on the top versus the sides because it gets used more. I considered leaving this grungy, but I just couldn't do it. So I went ahead and sanded it using 120 and then 180 and then 220. And after that, I just sealed it. When working with these box store products, you really have to be careful because the veneer is so thin. And in some cases, I won't even use 120. I'll just go right to 180 or even 220. This is some paint that I had left over from the Muntins project. That was project number 35, I believe. And it went on great. I love this color. This paint was sealed using polyacrylic in matte finish. Adding the decoupage paper was the most lengthy process in completing this project. I only had one piece of this decoupage paper, so there was really no room for error. I started out using a new product that's especially designed for adhering decoupage paper, but I don't think it worked as well as wallpaper paste, so I just switched back to the wallpaper paste. I also don't recommend using a foam brush to apply the wallpaper paste. It just doesn't work as well. I really recommend using a chip brush. It's cheap and it applies it much better. You may have noticed that I mixed the paper with water prior to laying it into the wallpaper paste. This prevents the paper from wrinkling, and it was a tip that was given by Brushed by Brandy in one of her podcasts. Also, in my experience of doing decoupage, I would also add that you do not want to apply that wallpaper paste too thick because as you're smoothing out the paper, you're also pushing out some of that wallpaper paste. And if you add too much, it's going to cause that paper to rip as you try to flatten it. Man, all I can say here is that removing the small shelf was far easier than trying to reinstall it. I had to get my husband to help me, and we had to kind of wedge it back in there. and then just put the screws back in. And that was even difficult, definitely more difficult than removing it. But we got it in there and it looks great. This was a super quick and super fun project I completed this summer. And we're already to my favorite part, which is installing the hardware, because that means that this project is done. So this is just a reminder of where we started, and here is the final reveal. I could have This is the end of Project 37, but thank you all for joining me on this journey to save borderline furniture from the landfill. And as always, thanks for watching.